As a result of recent drama that's coming out from the most recent YCS that happened in Minneapolis, I feel as though it's important to keep in mind that, it's just a game and we're all human, we all make mistakes. And in order to kind of balance out some of the negativity that's going on as a result of this most recent tournament, I want to talk about one of my favorite moments in recent YCS history. A moment that I'm going to call the most wholesome moment in YCS history. This moment came at YCS Pasadena 2019. I'll go ahead and give a little bit of background to kind of set the scene. Starting at the end of 2018, we started to see the introduction of some of the decks that would go on to create what is colloquially referred to as the Eternal format, also known as TOS format. This format consisted of 4 main decks: Thunder Dragon, Orchist, Sky Striker, and Salamangreat. The first to be introduced was Sky Striker, and Sky Striker was a very dominant deck pretty much from the moment that it was introduced into the game. It was introduced in one of the side sets, one of the deck build sets, and pretty much every card within it was extremely expensive if printed at a high rarity or short printed. It became the dominant force in the meta and was the dominant force in the meta for almost 3 years before Engage finally got banned. Between its release and the banning of Engage in 2020, the deck saw tons of its resources and tons of its options reduced in copies on the ban list. Eventually, once Engage got banned, some of those cards started to peel off, and it became clear that the real problem card was Engage. But before all of this unfolded, TOS format started getting into full effect. The strongest of the decks was definitely Sky Striker. Although you could argue that its ceiling wasn't as high as some of the other decks, it was the most consistently powerful deck across the entirety of the Eternal format. Even at times when some of the other decks waned off in popularity, Sky Striker continued to be one of the most powerful decks, either as a standalone strategy or as something to splash into other decks. The second strongest would have to be Orchist. Orchist probably had the highest ceiling out of all 4 decks, considering the fact that Mermaid allowed any 2 monsters with different names to become full Orchist combo. But once Mermaid got banned, even the core engine of cards, things like Dingirsu, things like Galatea, Babel, Crescendo, these powerful resources created a deck that had an insane turn 1 board that seemed extremely unassuming but actually represented a myriad of interruptions, while also having unbelievable follow-up in the way of graveyard activations and a lot of their resources returning to deck, and represented a huge resource loop in the grind game, allowing you to shuffle back resources with things like Galatea and Longirsu, and then reuse those resources using some of the leftover Orchists that were left in your graveyard after each activation. The other 2 decks, Thunder Dragon and Salamangreat, were extremely powerful in their own right and saw huge amounts of success. Salamangreat actually went on to win the World Tournament in 2019. That being said, Thunder Dragon was notorious for being one of the most powerful decks in the room, but still not being able to convert into any sort of YCS wins. It did eventually win a YCS at some point during TOS format, but it would consistently see itself losing to things like Salamangreat, to things like Sky Striker and Orchist. Eventually, as TOS format was winding down, it became obvious to pretty much everyone in the room at any given event that the 2 best decks were Sky Striker and Orchist. And a lot of times they started kind of mixing and matching, where you would have Orchist Thunder Dragon and you would have Orchist Sky Striker. Well, it became clear that when you mixed Orchist with Sky Striker, they kind of covered each other's weaknesses. Sky Striker had a huge issue with closing games, which would eventually be remedied with the introduction of the Utopia Double package, which would come later in its life. But before all of that, people saw that Orchist had trouble building a complex turn 1 board. Orchist's power was in the grind game, in the long game, being able to out-resource your opponent, whereas Sky Striker had a much better time basically accruing a ton of advantage turn 1 and then ending on a bunch of interaction. What you could do is you could take these 2 decks, which have slightly different ways of winning the game, and merging them together so that at any given point, You both have access to the insane advantage engine that is Sky Striker turn 1, but you also have access to the insane long game engine of Orchest. And when you combine the two, you end up with Engage being able to draw you a bunch of cards over the course of a combo, and then using the errant Sky Striker material to go into your Orchest combo, either ending on Babel, giving you access to playing on your opponent's turn, or ending on something like Crescendo just to give you an extra Omni negate. It became clear that mixing Sky Striker with Orchest was going to be the play moving forward. And going into YCS Pasadena, quite a few players were piloting the Orchest Sky Striker deck. Enter Koty Angeloff, who is playing True Draco Sky Striker, another Sky Striker variant, a variant that aimed to combine two engines, two strategies that basically just wanted to draw a bunch of cards and set a bunch of cards in the back row. Fast forward to the finals of YCS Pasadena. Koty Angeloff makes it to the finals. This is not his first time making it to the finals, and if he were to win, this wouldn't be his first time winning. One of his good friends, Kobe Short, also makes it to finals, and they play a game against each other. Games 1 and 2 don't really matter. They just trade game wins back and forth, and it ends up going to a game 3. Kobe Short, leading into the final bit of game 3, he realizes as his turn's winding down, he has whiffed game. He could have won, and he missed an activation or something, and he wasn't able to close the game out. And he was extremely disappointed because he knew that if he passed turn back to Koty, Koty could very easily take the game, or at the very least take control of the game and make it where Kobe couldn't win. Kobe passes back to Koty, and Koty draws for turn and then immediately passes turn back. And you can see in Kobe's face when you watch the VOD that the win meant far more to Kobe than it did to Koty, and Koty knew that. It's the equivalent of when in Cars, Lightning McQueen gets to the finish line, stops just short of winning the race, goes back to get the king, and pushes the king over the finish line. Because the king merely finishing his last race means far more to him than winning means to McQueen. And in that moment, even though Lightning McQueen lost, it was a far better experience for the viewer, and it showed just how much better of a person he was than the actual winner. And I think that speaks volumes to the type of person that Koty is. And I'm not going to get into details about any of the things that are going on right now. All I'm going to say is that Koty did an amazing thing at YCS Pasadena. He very easily could have added yet another win to his belt in 2019. And I think that speaks to the type of person that he is far more than any allegations that are going around right now do. Go down in the comments below. Let me know what you think the most wholesome moment in YCS or SJC, any big Yu-Gi-Oh tournament history is. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.